The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council shimmered under the light of 3 artificial suns. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the circular chamber, their worried whispers echoing off the crystal walls. At the center stage, High Speaker Brightwing's feathers trembled as he read the latest report. "Another colony lost," he announced, his translator converting his bird-like clicks into standard galactic common. "The 7th Fleet of the Stone Warriors, completely destroyed." The news sent ripples of fear through the assembled representatives. The Stone Warriors were known throughout the galaxy as one of the bravest and most powerful fighting forces. Their ships were made from living stone. Their weapons could crack planets. And now they were gone. Admiral Thomas Gray sat quietly in the human section, taking notes on his tablet. Next to him, Commander Jane Wells studied the holographic display of the attack patterns. They were among the few humans present, and as usual, the other species kept their distance. "The humans don't even have proper battle crystals," one representative whispered loudly enough for Thomas to hear. "Why are they even here?" Thomas ignored the comment. He'd heard worse in the 5 years since Earth joined the Council. Humans were considered the cowards of the galaxy, too cautious, too careful, always planning instead of acting. While other species charged into battle seeking glory, humans were known for establishing evacuation routes and defensive positions. High Speaker Brightwing raised his wings for silence. "The threat continues to advance. 3 more colonies lie in its path. The Crystal Empire's Legion of Light has volunteered to face this enemy directly." Cheers erupted from the gathered species. The Legion of Light was legendary. Their ships powered by pure stellar energy, their warriors trained from birth. "That's the 4th direct assault planned," Jane whispered to Thomas. "They're not learning." Thomas nodded, continuing to analyze the data. The strange enemy had appeared 6 months ago, emerging from the dark space between galaxies. It destroyed everything in its path, but something about its attack pattern caught Thomas's attention. "Speaker," Thomas stood up, his voice calm but firm. The chamber fell silent, many representatives turning away, as if embarrassment by association might infect them. "Earth would like to present an alternative strategy." Laughter echoed through the chamber. A representative of the metal mines, beings of living metal, spoke up. "What strategy? Running away? Building more bunkers? The humans don't even have a proper war fleet." High Speaker Brightwing raised his wings again. Though he shared the common view of humans as cowards, the Council's laws required all members be heard. "Proceed, Admiral Gray." Thomas walked to the center stage, plugging his tablet into the holographic projector. The attack patterns of the enemy appeared in 3-dimensional detail above the chamber. "We've been studying the enemy's movements," he said, highlighting specific points in the display. "They don't just attack randomly. They respond to specific triggers. Every major fleet that directly engaged them was destroyed. But look at these smaller colonies." The display zoomed in on several outer worlds. These colonies survived, not because they had better defenses, but because they followed standard human evacuation protocols. "The enemy seems to feed on direct military confrontation. The more we fight, the stronger it gets." Murmurs of disbelief filled the chamber. "Are you suggesting we don't fight?" A Stone Warrior representative bellowed. "That we act like humans." "I'm suggesting we fight smarter," Thomas replied. "Earth has developed strategies for dealing with superior forces. We've learned through our own history that sometimes the direct approach is the worst approach." High Speaker Brightwing studied the data. The patterns were clear, but accepting military advice from humans went against everything he believed. Yet as he looked at the lists of destroyed fleets and lost colonies, he realized they had nothing left to lose. "Explain your strategy, Admiral," he said finally. "The Council will hear Earth's plan." Thomas nodded, bringing up more detailed tactical displays. Behind him, Jane smiled slightly. For the first time since joining the Council, humanity's so-called cowardice might just save the galaxy. The chamber grew quiet as Thomas began to outline Earth's approach. Sometimes, he thought, It takes more courage to be careful than to be brave. The council chamber erupted into chaos as Admiral Thomas Gray finished presenting Earth's initial findings. The Stone Warriors stomped their crystal boots in anger, while the Legion of Light's representatives glowed bright red with fury. "This is an insult," shouted the Metal Mind leader, his chrome surface reflecting the chamber's lights. "Humans want us to run and hide, to abandon our honor." Commander Jane Wells stepped forward, her tablet displaying new data. "With respect," she said calmly, "we're not suggesting running away. We're suggesting fighting smart." The holographic display shifted to show the remains of the Seventh Fleet, the Stone Warriors' mighty ships, once proud and powerful, now drifted as space debris. The chamber grew quiet. "Look here." Thomas pointed to specific sections of the wreckage. "The enemy doesn't just destroy ships, it absorbs their energy. Every direct battle makes it stronger. That's why the bigger the fleet we send, the worse the defeat." High Speaker Brightwing ruffled his feathers thoughtfully. "You speak of patterns, Admiral Gray. Show us more." Thomas nodded to Jane, who brought up a new display. This one showed the successful evacuations of 3 smaller colonies. These settlements survived because they didn't try to fight. They used what we call strategic withdrawal, a planned, organized retreat that saves lives and resources. "Cordis has a new name, it seems," sneered a Legion of Light warrior, his body pulsing with golden energy. "Tell me," Thomas asked, turning to face him, "is it brave to lose your entire fleet in a hopeless battle? Or is it braver to save your people and live to fight another day?" The chamber fell silent again. Even the Legion warrior dimmed slightly. "Humans have a long history of facing stronger enemies," Jane continued. "We learned that sometimes the best way to win is to wait, watch, and understand your opponent. Every time we retreated from this enemy, we learned something new." She brought up another display, this one showing detailed scans of the enemy's energy patterns. "See these readings? The enemy gets stronger when we attack directly, but it actually gets weaker when there's no resistance. It's like it feeds on combat itself." The Metal Mind leader leaned forward, his logical circuits processing this information. "Explain your strategy then, humans. What do you propose?" Thomas straightened his uniform. "A 3-part plan. First, we evacuate the colonies in the enemy's path, but not randomly. We create specific patterns of movement that will help us understand how it thinks and chooses targets." Jane changed the display to show new defensive formations. "Second, we position our forces differently, not for direct combat, but for observation and quick response. We gather data, learn its weaknesses." "And third?" High Speaker Brightwing asked, his voice carrying a note of genuine curiosity. "Third," Thomas said firmly, "we let it get hungry." The chamber burst into confused whispers. The humans pulled up more displays, showing detailed predictions of enemy behavior based on their observations. "If it feeds on combat," Jane explained, "then we starve it. No glorious last stands, no heroic charges. We move our people, protect our resources, and watch. When it's weak enough, when we understand it completely, then we strike. Together, with a plan based on knowledge, not just courage." The council members looked at each other uncertainly. This wasn't how wars were fought in the galaxy. Glory, honor, direct combat. These were the ways of their peoples. But they couldn't deny the logic of the human argument, especially with so many destroyed fleets as evidence. High Speaker Brightwing raised his wings for attention. "The council will vote. Do we follow the human strategy, or do we continue with the Legion of Light's planned assault?" The chamber grew tense as the voting began. Thomas and Jane stood quietly, watching the holographic tally rise. They knew that changing centuries of military tradition wouldn't be easy, but Earth had faced similar challenges before. Finally, High Speaker Brightwing announced the results. By a narrow margin, the Council accepts Earth's proposal. "Admiral Gray, you have one chance to prove that human caution is worth more than our traditional courage." Thomas nodded solemnly. Sometimes, he said, the bravest thing you can do is think before you fight. 3 days after the Council's vote, the first test of Earth's strategy began. The colony world of Blue Haven lay directly in the enemy's path. Instead of warships, the humans sent evacuation vessels and observation posts. Admiral Thomas Gray stood on the bridge of his command ship, the Explorer, watching the operation unfold. Unlike the mighty warships of other species, human vessels were built for speed and stealth rather than direct combat. First wave of civilians loaded, Commander Jane Wells reported, checking her screens. No signs of panic. The evacuation protocols are working exactly as planned. Around them, alien observers watched with mixed expressions of doubt and curiosity. Captain Strongstone of the Stone Warriors crossed his crystal arms. This is how humans fight, by running away first. This is how we save lives, Thomas replied calmly. Watch and learn. The enemy appeared exactly as predicted, a massive cloud of dark energy that seemed to eat light itself. But instead of finding a heavily defended colony, it found an organized retreat in progress. The observation posts recorded everything. Look at the pattern. Jane pointed to the main screen. When there's no resistance, it moves slower. It's searching for something to fight. The alien observers leaned forward, watching intently. The enemy cloud drifted through the colony's outer defenses, which had been deliberately powered down. Sensors recorded every movement, every energy fluctuation. Second wave of evacuation complete, reported a human officer. 70% of colonists safely away. The enemy seemed confused. In previous encounters, it had faced fierce resistance, brave warriors charging to their doom. Now it found only empty buildings and powered-down defense systems. There, Thomas pointed suddenly. Did you see that? The enemy cloud had flickered, its dark energy pattern showing signs of weakness. The alien observers muttered in surprise. This is what we were waiting for, Jane explained, bringing up detailed sensor readings. It's not just getting weaker, it's revealing its structure. See these energy patterns. They're like a nervous system. We're learning how it thinks. The Stone Warrior captain nodded slowly, beginning to understand. You're not just running. You're studying it. Exactly, Thomas smiled. And now for Phase 2. At his signal, small unmanned probes launched from hidden positions around the colony. They weren't weapons. They were scientific instruments, gathering data about the enemy's composition. Final evacuation wave complete, came the report. All colonists secured. The enemy cloud moved through the empty colony, searching for resistance and finding none. The probes recorded its growing confusion, its weakening energy patterns. Send the data to the other colonies, Thomas ordered. They need to start their evacuations now, following the same pattern. We're going to lead this thing on a very specific path. The alien observers watched in amazement as the strategy unfolded. Where their mighty fleets had failed, simple observation posts and evacuation ships were succeeding. Not a single life had been lost. Admiral, Jane called out, excitement in her voice. The analysis is complete. Look at these readings compared to the previous attacks. The main screen showed 2 sets of data. In previous battles, the enemy had grown stronger with each engagement, absorbing the energy of combat itself. But now, faced with no resistance, its power was declining steadily. It's not just getting weaker, Thomas explained to the observers. We're learning its habits, its preferences, its weaknesses. Each empty colony teaches us more. Captain Strongstone stood straighter, his crystal form reflecting the screen's light. You're not fighting the enemy, he said slowly. You're solving it, like a puzzle. That's the human way, Jane replied. We learned long ago that understanding your enemy is more important than simply fighting them. As they watched, more evacuation ships jumped to safety, carrying thousands of colonists to secure locations. The enemy drifted aimlessly through empty space, its fearsome power diminishing without combat to feed on. Send word to the Council. Thomas ordered. The first phase is successful. Tell them to prepare for phase 2, and remind them that sometimes the greatest victory comes without firing a single shot. The alien observers exchanged glances. Perhaps there was more to human cowardice than they had realized. Perhaps there was something to learn from these cautious beings who turned retreat into victory. The Galactic Council's emergency chamber was silent as Admiral Thomas Gray presented the latest results. 2 weeks had passed since the first successful evacuation, and the data spoke for itself. 0 casualties, Thomas announced, pointing to the holographic display. 7 colonies evacuated. And most importantly, the enemy is now 30% weaker than when we started. Commander Jane Wells brought up a new series of images showing the dark energy cloud. The difference was clear. Where once it had been a massive, threatening mass, now it appeared thinner, almost transparent in places. Impressive, admitted the metal mind leader, his chrome surface reflecting the data displays. But avoiding battle is not the same as winning. That's where you're wrong, Thomas replied. He nodded to Jane, who activated a new hologram. We haven't been avoiding battle. We've been preparing for it. Look at this. The display showed a detailed map of the enemy's movements over the past 2 weeks. Each evacuated colony was marked with a glowing dot, forming a clear pattern. The enemy isn't random, Jane explained. It's following specific rules. Like a complex machine, it has programming. And now we understand it. Captain Strongstone of the Stone Warriors stepped forward, his crystal form catching the light. These patterns, they show weakness. Better, Thomas smiled. They show us exactly how to beat it. He expanded the hologram, revealing a complex web of energy readings. Every time the enemy finds an empty colony, it has to spend energy searching for targets. No combat means no energy absorbed. And now, it's starving. High Speaker Brightwing finished, his feathers rustling with understanding. Exactly, Jane confirmed. But there's more. Watch this. She played a recording from the latest evacuation. As the enemy cloud approached the colony, small drones, designed by the humans and built with help from the metal mines, moved in precise patterns around it. The drones emit fake energy signatures, Thomas explained, making the enemy think it's found targets. It expends energy trying to attack them, but there's nothing there to absorb. Like a hunter chasing shadows. The alien representatives watched in amazement as the enemy cloud on the recording became more and more agitated, wasting energy on the phantom targets. We've been teaching other species our evacuation techniques, Jane added. The Crystal Empire's outer colonies have already adapted our methods. Look at their success rate. New data appeared, showing how the Crystal Empire's colonies had survived using human tactics. Their evacuation ships, enhanced with human stealth technology, had saved millions of lives. But the real breakthrough came yesterday, Thomas said, his voice growing serious. He brought up a final set of readings. We found its core. The chamber erupted in surprise murmurs. The enemy had seemed like a formless cloud of energy, impossible to truly hurt. But the human observations had revealed something else. Here, Jane pointed to a specific point in the energy pattern, a dense cluster of organized energy, like a brain or a control center. We never saw it before because it was hidden behind all that combat energy it absorbed. But now that it's weaker, now we can strike, Captain Strongstone said, understanding filling his crystalline voice. Yes, Thomas nodded, but not with brute force. We need precision, timing. And most importantly, we need all of you. He laid out the next phase of the plan. The metal mines would adapt their technology to disrupt the enemy's energy field. The Stone Warriors would provide focused power through their crystal weapons. The Legion of Light would use their energy manipulation abilities, all coordinated by human strategy and timing. This is why we watched instead of fought, Jane explained. Why we retreated instead of attacked. We needed to understand, to find the real weakness, not just throw ships at it until something worked. High Speaker Brightwing rose from his seat, his wings spread wide. The Council has seen enough. What was once called cowardice, we now recognize as wisdom. Admiral Gray, you have the Council's full support. All species will follow human tactical command. Thomas nodded solemnly. Then let's begin the final phase. It's time to show the galaxy that true victory comes not from blind courage, but from careful planning and understanding. Around the chamber, representatives of the most powerful species in the galaxy prepared to follow human leadership. The tide had turned, not through force of arms, but through the power of patience and intelligence. The Explorer's Bridge hummed with activity as representatives from every major species gathered around Admiral Thomas Gray. The main screen showed their target, the weakened enemy cloud, now half its original size and growing more transparent by the hour. The final scans are complete, Commander Jane Wells announced, bringing up the detailed analysis. What we're seeing is unlike anything in galactic records. The enemy's true form was finally visible through its thinning energy field. At its core lay a complex structure of crystalline nodes, pulsing with dark light. It's not just a cloud of energy, Thomas explained to the gathered aliens. It's a living computer, a weapon designed to learn from combat and grow stronger with each battle. Captain Strongstone's crystal form vibrated with surprise, a machine that feeds on warfare itself. Exactly, Jane nodded. Each time we fought it directly, we weren't just losing. We were making it smarter, stronger. It absorbed not just energy, but combat data, battle tactics, strategic information. The Metal Mind leader processed this information through his chrome circuits. This explains why larger fleets failed more dramatically. More ships meant more data, more energy to absorb. Thomas brought up a new display showing the enemy's weakened state. By refusing to fight, by evacuating instead of engaging, we've been starving it of both energy and information. Now look here. He pointed to specific nodes within the crystal structure. These are its memory cores. They're starting to shut down. Without combat data to process, without energy to absorb, it's losing its accumulated knowledge. High Speaker Brightwing fluttered his wings thoughtfully. How many battles of data has it lost? Based on our calculations, Jane replied, it's forgotten nearly 60% of its combat knowledge. That's why its movements are becoming erratic. It's literally forgetting how to fight. The gathered aliens watched as new sensor data came in. The enemy cloud was now moving in circles, its once precise attacks replaced by random searching. But there's something else, Thomas said, his voice growing serious. Something we discovered in its base programming. This isn't just a weapon, it's a test. The chamber fell silent as he brought up the decoded information. It was sent here to find the strongest warriors in our galaxy, to learn from them, to absorb their knowledge and tactics. Then it would return to its creators, carrying all that combat data. And we denied it that knowledge, the Legion of Light commander said, his golden form glowing with understanding. By refusing to fight, we made ourselves invisible to it, Jane finished. It's programmed to ignore anything that doesn't register as combat data. Every evacuation, every retreat, every empty colony. We weren't just saving lives. We were erasing ourselves from its memory. Captain Strongstone stepped forward. Then our greatest warriors played directly into its plans. Every heroic last stand was exactly what it wanted. Thomas nodded. But now we have a chance to end this. Not with a glorious battle, but with something it can't understand or fight against. He laid out the final phase of the human plan. The metal mines would create a massive network of false combat signatures, drawing the enemy's attention. The stone warriors would use their crystal technology not to fight, but to resonate with the enemy's memory cores. The Legion of Light would then channel their energy not as weapons, but as a containment field. It won't expect this, Jane explained. It can't expect it. Its programming only recognizes direct combat as a threat. Working together, using our technologies for containment instead of combat, we can shut it down completely, Thomas finished. not destroy it. That would only feed it more energy, but disable it. Let it drift harmlessly in space, its memory cores empty, its purpose forgotten. The alien representatives looked at each other, centuries of warrior tradition warring with this new understanding of victory without combat. High Speaker Brightwing spoke first. Once we called humans cowards for refusing glorious battle. Now we see that true bravery wears many faces. The Council supports your plan, Admiral Gray. Let us show the galaxy that wisdom can triumph where warfare failed. Thomas nodded, looking at the weakened enemy on the main screen. Soon, the weapon that fed on courage would learn that there were some forms of bravery it could never understand or defeat. Space lit up with 1,000 points of light as the final phase of the human plan began. The enemy cloud, now barely a quarter of its original size, drifted toward what it thought was a massive fleet engagement. Metal mine projectors at full power. Commander Jane Wells reported from her station on the Explorer. The enemy is taking the bait. Admiral Thomas Gray watched the main screen intently. Around him, representatives from every major species monitored their own systems. For the first time in galactic history, all species worked together not to fight, but to deceive. Look how eagerly it moves toward combat, Captain Strongstone observed. Like a hungry animal smelling food. The metal mines had created an elaborate illusion. Holographic ships locked in battle, energy weapons firing, all generating the combat data the enemy craved. But there was nothing real to absorb, no actual combat energy to feed on. Stone warrior crystals in position, came another report. Hidden among the debris of previous battles, special resonance crystals waited for their moment. Legion of Light energy network at 90%, the Golden Commander added. His people had created an invisible web of containment energy, ready to spring shut. Thomas checked the final readings. The enemy was now at its weakest point ever recorded. Its memory cores flickered dimly, starved of combat data. Its once mighty energy field had thinned to almost nothing. This is where we usually charge in for the kill, Jane commented quietly. Exactly what it would want. And exactly what we won't do, Thomas replied. He opened a channel to all ships. All units, execute final phase on my mark. The enemy cloud reached the center of the holographic battle. Its sensors desperately tried to absorb the combat data that wasn't really there. In its weakened state, it didn't realize it was feeding on emptiness. Now, Thomas commanded. Captain Strongstone activated the resonance crystals. They began to hum at exactly the same frequency as the enemy's memory cores. The sound was silent in space, but the vibrations traveled through the enemy's crystalline structure. Metal mine projectors switching to interference patterns, the Chrome leader announced. The false battle disappeared, replaced by confusing signals that scrambled the enemy's ability to process information. The Legion of Light commander raised his golden hands, containment field activating. Energy beams shot out from hidden positions, but they didn't strike the enemy. Instead, they formed a complex cage around it, designed not to attack but to hold. The enemy is trying to read our tactics, Jane reported, watching the sensors. But there are no tactics to read, no combat data to absorb. On the main screen, they watched as the resonance crystals did their work. One by one, the enemy's memory cores began to shut down. The combat knowledge of 1,000 battles leaked away into space. It's trying to fight back. Captain Strongstone warned as the enemy cloud pulsed weakly. Let it, Thomas said calmly. Every attempt to fight just drains more of its energy. There's nothing here for it to absorb. The alien representatives watched in amazement as the mighty enemy that had destroyed their greatest fleets was slowly, peacefully disabled. Not through glorious combat, but through patience and understanding. Memory core shutdown at 60%, Jane announced. 70%, 80%. The enemy's movements became more erratic. It tried to generate its own energy field, but the Legion of Light's containment web prevented it. It searched for combat data to process, but the metal mine's interference gave it nothing useful. Final memory core shutting down, Jane reported. Enemy weapon is going dormant. The dark cloud faded away completely, leaving only the crystalline structure floating harmlessly in space. Its complex programming, designed to learn from the greatest warriors in the galaxy, had been defeated by those who chose not to fight at all. Send word to the Council, Thomas ordered. The threat is over. Not one life was lost in the final operation. The alien representatives looked at the disabled enemy with mixed emotions. Their warrior cultures had taught them that victory required battle, that courage meant facing death head-on. But here was a different kind of victory, won through patience and wisdom. Perhaps, High Speaker Brightwing said softly, "It is time we redefined what it means to be brave." The explorer's crew began scanning the dormant crystal structure, knowing that its secrets would help protect the galaxy from future threats. They had proved that sometimes the greatest victory comes not from fighting harder, but from fighting smarter. 1 month after the enemy's defeat, the Galactic Council gathered for a historic session. The Grand Chamber, once filled with doubt about human methods, now buzzed with excitement as Admiral Thomas Gray approached the central platform. High Speaker Brightwing's feathers shimmered in the artificial sunlight as he addressed the assembly. Today, we rewrite our understanding of courage. Today, we honor those who taught us that wisdom can triumph over warfare. The massive screens showed images from their victory, the disabled enemy crystal structure, now safely contained in a research facility, and the successful evacuation of countless colonies that had saved millions of lives. Commander Jane Wells stood beside Thomas, holding a data tablet containing their final report. Around them, representatives from every species waited to hear their conclusions. The enemy weapon, Thomas began, was sent to find the strongest warriors in our galaxy. Instead, it found something its creators never expected: the strength to avoid unnecessary battle. The metal mind leader stepped forward, his chrome surface gleaming. Our analysis of its memory cores reveals something remarkable. It was programmed to learn from combat, but had no protocols for handling strategic retreat. The human approach simply didn't register as a threat, or as data worth collecting, Jane added. She brought up new holographic displays showing the enemy's programming. It was built to gather combat techniques from the bravest warriors in the galaxy. It never occurred to its creators that true bravery might mean choosing not to fight. Captain Strongstone, now a strong supporter of human tactics, addressed his fellow stone warriors. "We thought humans were cowards because they planned escape routes before battle plans. Now we understand. They were saving their strength for battles worth fighting." The Legion of Light Commander's golden form pulsed in agreement. "They taught us that retreat is not surrender, and caution is not cowardice. Their methods saved more lives than our mightiest weapons ever could." Thomas activated a new display showing updated galactic defense protocols. "Moving forward, all species will receive training in what we call strategic assessment. Before any battle, we ask, is this fight necessary? Is there a smarter way to achieve our goal? Can we save lives instead of risking them?" The humans' greatest weapon, Jane explained, was never their ships or their technology. It was their ability to swallow pride, to think before acting, to value life over glory. High Speaker Brightwing raised his wings for silence. In recognition of their service to the galaxy, the Council has made 2 historic decisions. The chamber grew quiet as he continued. First, Earth will lead the new Galactic Defense Academy, teaching all species their methods of strategic planning and careful analysis. Approving murmurs filled the chamber. Even the most warrior-like species had come to respect the human approach. Second, the speaker continued, "We are officially removing the term cowardly from all references to humans in galactic records. Instead, they will be recorded as the species that taught us the true meaning of courage." Thomas and Jane exchanged surprised looks as applause filled the chamber. The metal mind leader approached them, extending his chrome hand in friendship. "We called you cowards," he said, "because we didn't understand. True courage isn't just about facing danger. It's about knowing when to face it and how to face it wisely." Around the chamber, Representatives from different species began sharing stories of how human methods had saved their colonies. The Stone Warriors spoke of learning patience, the Legion of Light of discovering restraint, the Metal Minds of calculating more than just battle odds. What happens now? A young alien representative asked Thomas. The Admiral smiled. Now we prepare. There may be more weapons like this out there, more tests of our courage. But next time, we'll face them together, not just with bravery, but with wisdom. As the session ended, Thomas looked out over the assembled species. Former enemies now stood as friends. Proud warriors now valued patience alongside power. They had learned that sometimes the greatest courage is shown not in the heat of battle, but in the choice to find a better way. The galaxy called us cowards, Jane said softly, until they needed our kind of courage. And now they understand, Thomas replied, watching the unified species file out together. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is think before you act, retreat before you advance, and save lives before you take them. In the great records of the Galactic Council, that day marked not just the end of a crisis, but the beginning of a new understanding of what it truly means to be brave.